The storm. For the rest of the day, Duck fretted over the development of the bus company. He knew that things were in a shambled state, but surely the situation wasn't that bad. The Fat Controller wouldn't allow it, he thought anxiously. He'd never see the end of our line. Then again, he added, what if the passengers do stop travelling by rail? What would happen to us then? Next morning, Oliver returned to work, which made Duck feel better. When Duck told him about George and what he had said, Oliver was stunned. I don't believe a word of it, he huffed. I've heard a lot of stories about that George, and I reckon he's as bad as Bulgy. He's all hot air and no steam. You can say what you like about him, said Duck fearfully, but that's not stopping the bus company's plans. We have to prove that we're still really useful to avoid the worst happening. We don't want to end up like Toby's old line, do you? Oliver shivered. The thought of losing their branch to a bus company was almost hard to imagine. And then they made a solemn vow to give it their all and not slow down in the least. Several days later, the weather changed. Huge masses of clouds appeared on the horizon, and high winds swirled in from the sea. Every day that week, the engines forced their way through the oncoming storm, determined not to be beaten. But every day, the climate worsened, which meant fewer people went out, and fewer passengers to collect from the top station. After a very trying day, Oliver was making his way home with a half-empty train. He reached the road and noticed George close by. The steamroller smirked as Oliver steamed glumly past. Well, well, look what the wind blew in. No passengers again, eh? Too bad. I'm sure no one will miss you when your rails have been taken up. Huh, that'll be the day, snapped Oliver crossly. His steam pressure rose, and he stormed angrily down the line, as George laughed at his ranting. That'll be the day, that'll be the day. Even so, the engine's spirits became as miserable as the weather that night. The wind was unbearable, roaring across the coastlines and howling through the air vents of the big engine shed. The engines listened to it anxiously. I wouldn't like to be on your line come the morning, shivered Henry to Duck. Driver says there's going to be heavy rains to follow. Duck's heart sank even lower, but he remembered their promise. Well, Oliver and me'll keep the trains running, come rain or wind, he added, as another mournful howl shrieked through the vents. Duck was the first train out next morning. As he pulled up to the platform, he was impressed to see a group of important-looking passengers waiting to board his train. Duck didn't know who they were, nor did his driver, but he knew one thing. These passengers were going to get the run of their life, bad weather or not. The guard's whistle blew, and whistling shrilly, Duck stormed out of the station as the first few drops of rain began to fall. They made excellent progress as they stormed through the tunnel, but when they emerged from the other side, they were met head-on with a horrendous downpour. "Ugh!" gasped Duck, shivering with cold. Nevertheless, he forged bravely on until they reached the passing station. As Duck rested to catch his breath, the station master ran up. "You'll have to go back," he warned. "This weather's getting dangerous. We've been battered by huge waves, and we fear the line might be washed away." "But we can't," protested Duck. "We have to—" Suddenly, he was cut off as an enormous wave crashed against the beach and sprayed the rails beyond the platform. Duck shuddered again as cold sea water splattered onto his boiler. Almost before he had recovered, a second wave struck the coastline like a blow, this time splattering the line with fish and seaweed, much to Duck's dismay. "Come on, Duck, let's get out of here," urged his driver. Duck didn't need telling twice, and reversed his train back to the big station. When the station master heard, he declared the Little Western to be closed off until the storms had passed. "But what about my passengers?" asked Duck. "How will they reach the top station?" "I'm sorry, Duck," came the reply, "but they'll have to take the bus instead. That was more than Duck wanted to know. He left his coaches and trundled sadly to the shed. Oliver was surprised to see him back so soon. "It's all over," said Duck sadly. "The storms were too strong. Those important people are sure to think we're unreliable now." "Oh dear," quivered Oliver. He held his breath as he asked the dreaded question. "What will the Fat Controller say?" "I really don't know," answered Duck in a mournful tone. "But I know one thing. The Little Western is finished." "Wait, hold on, interrupted Ginty. "I don't understand this. You claim that your branch line was closed, and yet here you are still running it. Surely that wasn't all that happened?" Duck and Oliver exchanged grins. "Of course it wasn't, but back then we didn't know the whole story. It was after the storm the following day that we soon learnt the truth about the bus company and about those important looking passengers."